The smell of diesel and wet pavement clung to the last bus out of Port Haven. I leaned my head against the cold window, watching the harbor lights smear into streaks of gold and rust. Behind me, the city I'd called home felt like a bad bruise I kept pressing, painful, familiar, and still kinda mine. Name's Lena Cross, 31, flat broke, and running on caffeine and poor decisions. 2 months back, Grandma passed. She built half this town's docks from scratch, turned rust into gold, and left behind a fat shipping fortune. Said she wanted me to have one thing, her trust fund. $3.6 million. In my name. Or that's what I thought. The bus rattled across the bridge when my phone buzzed at 4:17 a.m. A bank alert lit up the screen. Large transfer initiated, Cross Estate Trust Henry and Marlene Cross joint account. Amount, $3,600,000. I blinked once. Then again. My chest just bottomed out. Henry and Marlene Cross, aka Mom and Dad. What the hell, I muttered, scrolling with shaking hands. Balance, $0. Then a note popped up. Funds dispersed per updated beneficiary directive. Updated? My grandma's will was rock solid. I had notarized copies sitting in my inbox. Heart pounding, I hit Mom's number before my brain caught up. She picked up on the third ring, voice all tired and saint-like. Honey, what's wrong? What's wrong? The trust account's empty. Where's the money? A sigh. The kind she used when she wanted me to feel dramatic. Oh, Lena, there were complications. Some of your grandmother's old business debts. Your father and I took care of them. Took care? That was my inheritance, Mom. Then Dad's voice cut in from the background, steady and smug. You'll understand when you're older. Family assets stay with the family. I barked out a laugh. I'm 31, Dad. Then start acting like it, he snapped. Your grandmother spoiled you rotten. This evens things out. Mom's tone iced over. Don't expect a dime, sweetheart. You should be grateful we even told you. Click. Line dead. The bus engine growled louder, drowning out the silence left behind. Outside, dawn was rolling in gray and cold, waves hammering the steel hulls down at the pier. I could feel my heartbeat keeping time with the pistons. Pulled out my laptop right there on the seat. Grandma's original will was still in my email, clear as day, leaving the trust to me. But when I scrolled further down, my blood went cold. A new addendum sat beneath it, dated 2 weeks after she died. Both my parents' digital signatures stamped on it. No. Freakin' way. The notary's name, J. Cutler. I knew that name. Dad's old law buddy from when he handled maritime contracts. They hadn't just stolen the money. They'd forged the whole damn thing. By sunrise, I was pacing my tiny apartment near the docks, floorboards creaking under my boots. The harbor horns bellowed like they knew something. My phone buzzed again. 2 new credit cards opened under my name, one already maxed out. I leaned against the wall, shaking. Dad had the law know-how, Mom had the guilt trips, and together they were unstoppable. Except this time, they messed with the wrong daughter. I grabbed my keys and headed out. The air outside was razor-sharp, the streets around the port still asleep. Grandma used to tell me, never let anyone take your sea legs, kiddo. I could almost hear her voice carried on that salty wind. I called her estate lawyer. Straight to voicemail. This is Lena Cross. There's been an unauthorized transfer on the Cross Trust. Call me ASAP. By noon I was holed up in a coffee shop across from the port office, fingers wrapped around a mug gone cold, eyes glued to probate records. And there it was, Cutler's notary stamp again. Same firm Dad once represented. Coincidence? Not a damn chance. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Come home if you want to talk. We're at the house. Bait. But I couldn't ignore it. Their house sat on a bluff above Port Havens Bay, sunlight bouncing off the water like broken mirrors. I parked in the driveway, staring at the colonial they'd remodeled last year, pretty sure on my dime. Mom opened the door, voice syrupy sweet. Lena, come in. No need for dramatics. Dad was at the kitchen table, arms crossed like a judge. We did what's best for the family, he said flatly. For your retirement, maybe, I shot back. His jaw twitched. Watch your mouth. I slid my phone across the table, the bank alert glowing between us. That money was mine. Grandma made it crystal clear. Mom's expression hardened. She was confused near the end. We just fixed the paperwork. By faking her signature? Dad stood up, voice low and dangerous. You have no proof. And if you push this, remember, I still know people down at the port. One call from me, and you're blacklisted. That did it. I stood so fast my chair scraped the tile. Try me. I walked out, their laughter following me through the door, light, cruel, certain they'd won. But they hadn't. Because if they could fake a trail on paper, I could build one online. And I knew exactly who to call to help me dig. That night, a message pinged from Danny, meet me at Pier 9. I've got something you're gonna wanna see. Pier 9 always gave me the creeps after dark. The air smelled like salt and rust, the kind that gets under your skin and stays there. The place was dead quiet except for the creak of ropes and the distant hum of a tugboat engine. That's where Danny Mercer told me to meet her. She was leaning against a stack of cargo crates, hoodie up, tablet glowing in her hands. Same old Danny, tech genius with the sleep schedule of a raccoon. Damn, you look like you haven't slept in a week, she said without looking up. Try to, I shot back. What have you got? She turned the screen toward me. You're not gonna like it. Lines of transactions glowed in blue, account IDs, timestamps, offshore links. Your folks didn't just drain the trust, Danny said. They funneled it through a shell company. Cross Maritime Holdings. Guess who's listed as executives? I didn't need to guess. Henry and Marlene Cross. Bingo. My stomach dropped. They used Grandma's company name? Worse, she said, scrolling. They bought a freakin' yacht last week. 48-footer. Registered under your dad's old maritime license. I blinked. You're kidding. Danny smirked. Wish I was. Wanna know what they called it? She tapped the screen again. Seraphine. I froze. That was Grandma's middle name. The one she hated anyone else using. Wow, I muttered, shaking my head. That's low, even for them. Hang on, there's more. Danny's tone shifted. They didn't just screw you, Lena. I pulled estate filings from other relatives. Small trusts, 20 grand here, 30 there. All routed through the same accounts. They've been skimming the family for years. I stared at the screen, my throat tight. They stole from everyone. Looks like it. I let out a slow breath. Okay. What's our next move? Get proof, she said. Enough to stick in court. We need something hard, signatures, receipts, the works. I crossed my arms. Where's this yacht docked? Danny's smirk turned into a grin. Funny you ask. About 100 yards that way. I turned. Sure enough, under the glow of a lone pier light, a sleek white cruiser bobbed gently on the black water. Brand new. Gleaming. Out of place among the rusted fishing boats. That's Seraphine, she said. You can see the name on the hull. My heart thudded in my ears. You think we can get on it? She gave me a look. Lena, I can break into a federal database in under 10 minutes. A fancy boat door's basically a polite invitation. Half an hour later, we were crouched near the boarding ramp, dressed in black like wannabe spies. The night air cut sharp against my skin, and every sound felt too loud. This is a terrible idea, I whispered. This, Danny said, pulling a lockpick from her pocket, is a brilliant idea. Terrible would be going home and pretending you're fine while your parents sail around on your inheritance. The lock clicked. Door opened. Just like that. Inside, everything gleamed, cream leather, glass countertops, polished teak floors. It smelled like champagne and self-importance. A framed photo sat on the counter, Mom and Dad, grinning in the sun, holding up glasses of bubbly like they'd just conquered the world. Unbelievable, I muttered. Danny snapped a photo. Evidence, she said, moving through the cabin like she'd done this 100 times. In the bedroom, I found a small safe tucked under a desk. Dad was old school with passwords, always used birthdays. I tried mine. Click. Inside was a folder labeled transfer logs. I pulled it out, my pulse going wild. The papers inside showed wire transfers, notary seals, fake digital signatures, even Grandma's name scrawled in shaky ink. That's her signature, I whispered, my throat burning. Except it's not. Danny peeked over my shoulder. This is gold, Lena. Actual, solid proof. Let's copy everything and bail before. Before someone what? We froze. My dad stood in the doorway, flashlight in hand, wearing a windbreaker and that same smug look that used to drive me insane. Well, look who's here, he said, stepping inside. Breaking and entering, huh? That's a felony, Lena. My grip tightened on the folder. So is forgery, last I checked. He smiled, that slow, lawyer smile. You think you can prove that? Already did, Danny said coolly. Digital timestamps match your company records. Dad's expression didn't change, but his jaw flexed. You're the little hacker friend, right? Maybe I should call the cops. Have you both hauled in? I took a step forward. Go ahead. Then you can explain why your daughter's inheritance paid for this floating midlife crisis. That landed. I saw it, the flicker of panic behind his eyes. He pointed at the folder in my hand. Leave that. Now. Come take it, I said quietly. We stared each other down, the air between us crackling. Then he dropped his arm. You're making a mistake, Lena. Family doesn't survive this kind of thing. Then maybe it shouldn't, I said, walking past him. He didn't follow. Just stood there, flashlight beam trembling slightly. Back in Danny's car, the folder sat in my lap, my hands still shaking. You realize you just picked a fight with people who play dirty, right? She said, eyes flicking to me. Good, I said, staring out the window. They'll finally meet someone who plays smarter. She gave a low whistle. Guess we're at war, huh? Full on, I said. And I'm done losing. The yacht lights faded behind us as we drove off, the city skyline glimmering ahead. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. Next morning, someone slipped an envelope under my door. Inside, a photo of me on the yacht, and a note that said, "Stay out of family business." The envelope hit the floor before sunrise. No return address, no stamp, just my name scrawled in thick black Sharpie. I tore it open half asleep and nearly dropped the contents. Photos. Grainy, night-shot images of me and Danny sneaking onto the yacht. The final one? Me holding the folder of transfer logs, face clear as day. A note sat on top, typed and taped to cheap printer paper. "Stay out of family business." My blood went cold. Someone had been watching us. I called Danny immediately. "Guess who got a love letter?" I said, snapping a photo of the envelope. She swore under her breath. "They're already moving. Check your email." I opened my laptop, heart pounding. At the top of my inbox sat a message from an anonymous account. No subject line, just attachments. Inside were the same photos and a fake email thread that made it look like I'd threatened my dad for money. Subject line: concern for employee conduct, Port Haven Shipping. "Oh my God," I whispered. "They sent this to my job." Danny's voice hardened. "They're smearing you, Lena." Classic intimidation move. By the time I got to the port office, the whispers had already started. People stopped mid-conversation when I walked past. My supervisor, Mark, was waiting at my desk, arms crossed, that awkward HR smile plastered on. "Got a minute?" I followed him to a side office. He shut the door gently, like I was a wild animal he didn't want to spook. "We received an anonymous tip," he started. "It says you've got family issues affecting your judgment." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "Family issues?" "Yeah, the issue is they stole $3.6 million and framed me for it." Mark's eyebrows shot up. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but HR needs to do a review. For now, we'll pause your assignments. Full pay until we sort this out." Pause. I repeated, voice cracking. "That's code for, we're cutting you loose." He sighed. "I'm sorry, Lena." When I left the office, every set of eyes in the break room followed me. I heard snippets: "She's suing her folks, got fired from her last gig too, unstable." By noon, 3 of my clients had emailed to temporarily suspend contracts. All within an hour of each other. The message was clear: my parents weren't just trying to steal my money, they were nuking my reputation. Danny showed up at my apartment that evening, laptop in one hand, energy drink in the other. "You won't believe this," she said, bursting in before I could even lock the door. She flipped open the screen. I traced the email metadata. The anonymous account? Created from a public library computer. But guess what device took the original photos? I frowned. "Tell me." She zoomed in on the metadata. "Your mom's phone model. Same signature, same EXIF data." She didn't even bother stripping it. My knees went weak. "You're telling me my mom sent those photos?" "Yup," Danny said grimly. "She framed you, Lena." They both did. They're desperate. I paced the room, hands on my head. I can't believe this. They're burning down everything I've got left. Then we hit back harder, Danny said. We've got their fake trust docs, the forged signatures, now the smear campaign. This is textbook fraud and harassment. I stopped pacing. We need a lawyer who will actually go for their throats. Already found one, she said, typing quickly. Name's Tina Harrow. Used to work with federal estate cases. You might have seen her before, she's the woman who stepped off that chopper the night you left town. I blinked. The one with the folder? Danny nodded. Yup. I reached out. She said she's been tracking your parents' financial mess for months. Wants to meet. My heart thudded. When? Tomorrow morning. Harbour Cafe. She'll bring everything. The next day, the cafe was half empty. Rain drizzled against the windows, the kind of steady gray that matched my mood. My mom sat across from me, stirring sugar into her coffee like we were just catching up after church. Lena, she said softly, let's not make this worse than it already is. We can settle this privately. I stared at her, the picture of calm manipulation. Settle? You forged Grandma's will, wrecked my job, and trashed my name online. What's left to settle? Before she could answer, a shadow crossed the table. Morning, ladies. Tina Harrow slid into the booth beside me, trench coat dripping rainwater, a thick folder under her arm. Her voice was smooth, professional, dangerous. Mrs. Cross, she said, setting the folder down. I represent the late Evelyn Cross's estate. I believe you've been misusing its assets. Mom's face went white. Who are you? Tina Harrow, she said, flashing a card. Estate enforcement. And I have something you'll want to see. She opened the folder and spread out several documents, bank statements, signature comparisons, notary logs. These, she said, tapping the papers, invalidate every amendment you filed after Evelyn's death. They're all forgeries. Mom's spoon clattered into her cup. Coffee splashed across the table. That's ridiculous, she said, voice trembling. My husband handled all that. Tina's expression didn't move. Your signature appears on every page. Denying it would be perjury. Mom's mask cracked. Her lips trembled as she grabbed napkins, blotting at the spill. I leaned forward. You tried to ruin me. You thought no one would ever find out. Tina continued calmly, you have two choices, Mrs. Cross. Return the funds voluntarily, or face criminal charges. Mom's eyes darted toward the exit. Most of it's tied up, in assets. Investments. Liquidate it, I said flatly. Or the court will. Tina closed the folder with a quiet snap. Probate court reopens Monday. Subpoenas are already issued. You might want to lawyer up. Mom stood, face pale. This isn't over. Tina smiled faintly. You're right, it's just starting. Mom stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots. The door chimed behind her, and the cafe went quiet again. Tina looked at me. She's going to run scared. But that's good. Fear makes people sloppy. We'll use that. I nodded slowly, adrenaline still buzzing. So what's next? She handed me a copy of the paperwork. We build a case. And this time, Lena. She leaned in, eyes sharp as glass. We finish it. A week later, a sheriff's deputy showed up at my parents' mansion with a court summons in hand. And that's when the real war began. The sky over Port Haven was a dull bruise the morning it all went down. A black SUV rolled up to my parents' mansion at exactly 8:42 a.m., crunching over their gravel driveway. Out stepped a sheriff's deputy in mirrored shades, a thick stack of papers in his hand. I watched from my car parked across the street, fingers clenched tight on the steering wheel. He knocked once. Then again. When Dad opened the door, wearing that smug, retired lawyer look he always wore, the deputy handed over the summons. Henry and Marlene Cross, you've been served. Dad's face twisted, jaw tightening as he flipped through the pages. He looked up, scanning the street, and his eyes locked on me. For once, I didn't look away. The Cross versus Cross case had officially begun. Tina Harrow didn't waste a second. She filed in Norfolk Circuit Court, 9 counts in total. Fraudulent transfer, forgery, undue influence, conversion, and civil harassment. Attached, 47 exhibits, bank wires, notary stamps, email headers, the yacht purchase contract. Your dad's gonna lose his mind when he sees this, Danny said, scrolling through the case brief at my kitchen table. Good, I said, half smiling. He's had it too easy for too long. She grinned. Oh, he's toast. You're about to turn family drama into a federal event. The first hearing felt like walking into a pressure cooker. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. Reporters filled the back rows, whispering names into microphones. Dock workers, old neighbors, even a few distant cousins had shown up to watch the Cross family implode. Dad walked in wearing a cheap gray suit and the confidence of a man who still thought he could talk his way out of anything. Mom followed, eyes red-rimmed, her pearls slightly crooked. When the bailiff called, "All rise," my pulse thudded in my ears. Judge Harmon looked like he'd seen every brand of Family Feud. He took his seat and gave the room a glance that could slice steel. "Miss Harrow," he said, "you may proceed." Tina stood, calm, collected, lethal. Your Honor, this is not a misunderstanding between relatives. This is systematic theft, a betrayal wrapped in forged signatures and false amendments. Dad's attorney, some guy named Dillard with a mustache that screamed billable hours, stood to counter. Your Honor, this is a family matter, not a criminal one. My clients merely corrected inconsistencies in the will. Tina smiled, that slow, surgical kind of smile that meant she was about to dismantle someone. Let's test that theory, shall we? First up, the trust officer from the bank. He walked the court through every login made on the Cross estate account. Tina pointed at the screen projected behind him. These logins, after Evelyn Cross's death, all came from the defendant's IP address. The man nodded. Yes, ma'am. From the Cross residence Wi-Fi. Dad shifted in his seat. Next, a forensic handwriting analyst took the stand, comparing Grandma's real signature to the fakes. The forged one, he explained, shows inconsistent pressure points. It was likely traced digitally. Mom looked ready to cry. Dad looked ready to kill the messenger. Tina leaned forward. Mr. Cross, you practiced maritime law for 20 years. You understand what forgery means, don't you? His lawyer jumped up. Objection. Sustained, said the judge, but the damage was done. Then came my turn. When Tina called my name, my legs felt like concrete, but I made myself stand. I swore in, sat down, and faced the two people who raised me, who used to kiss my forehead goodnight, now sitting there like strangers in a courtroom full of witnesses. Tina started softly. Lena, tell the court what happened after you discovered the transfer. I told them everything, the bank alert, the lies, the yacht, the smear campaign. My voice cracked once, but I didn't stop. And how did you feel, Tina asked, when your parents told you, quote, don't expect a cent? I met Dad's eyes. Like I'd just been cut out of my own life. He shifted, jaw working like he wanted to say something but couldn't. When cross-examination came, his lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, emotional, vengeful. "Miss Cross," he said, "isn't it true you broke into your parents' yacht?" "Yeah," I said evenly. "Because that's where they hid the evidence." A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge looked like he was holding back a smirk. The day stretched long, but by sunset, the tide had turned. Gage, my cousin, testified about the scholarship fund that disappeared, 50 grand gone overnight. Rowan, my sister, called in from Richmond over video, told the court how her startup money vanished into the same offshore accounts. By the time Tina was done, the courtroom felt electric, like everyone was watching the mighty Cross family crumble one lie at a time. Dad tried to keep his poker face, but the sweat on his collar gave him away. Mom couldn't stop shaking. When the judge finally spoke, his voice filled the silence. "This court finds clear evidence of fraud, forgery, and unlawful transfer of trust assets." Mom gasped. Dad's head dropped. "The defendants are ordered to pay full restitution, $3.6 million, plus punitive damages and attorney's fees. Total judgment, $5.1 million. It hit like thunder. Reporters scrambled for quotes. My phone buzzed non-stop. Danny squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might break it. Dad stood up, face pale. "We're bankrupt," he muttered. Tina didn't even flinch. "Then you'd better call an auctioneer." And just like that, the empire they stole crumbled. Within weeks, their accounts were frozen. The yacht was towed from the marina, auctioned to the highest bidder. Their waterfront condo, repossessed. Even Dad's old law firm turned on him, handing over files to avoid being dragged down too. I got the first restitution transfer 2 months later, $3.6 million, mine again. Gage got his scholarship money back, plus damages. Rowan's business got funded properly this time. Everything Grandma built had finally landed where it belonged. But it didn't feel like victory, not yet. Not until the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. 6 months later, I parked across from the house I grew up in, just in time to watch my parents pack their last box and drive away for good. 6 months later, the house I grew up in didn't even look real anymore. The white colonial with the blue shutters, once Grandma's pride and joy, sat hollow and stripped bare. The "For Sale" sign was gone, replaced by a bright yellow sticker nailed to the door. Foreclosure sale, absolute auction. No reserve. I parked across the street, engine idling, watching movers haul out boxes like they were emptying a mausoleum. The wind smelled like cut grass and salt water. Somewhere down the block, a kid's laughter floated through the air, and for a second, I could almost picture my childhood again. Sunday barbecues, bike races, the squeak of the old porch swing. Then the front door opened, and all that nostalgia turned to dust. Dad came out first, dragging a worn leather suitcase. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow. Mom followed, clutching a single cardboard box labeled kitchen, fragile. Her pearl necklace was gone. So was the smugness. They didn't talk. Didn't even look at each other. Just loaded the last of their stuff into a dented gray sedan that coughed like it was on its last legs. Dad stopped for one long moment, staring back at the house, at everything they'd burned down trying to keep control. Then he climbed in, jaw tight, and drove off. I didn't move. Didn't wave. Didn't even blink. The sedan disappeared down the street, taillights shrinking into nothing. The silence that followed felt different this time, not empty, not sad. Just, done. I looked down at my phone. Contacts: Mom, home. Dad, cell. My thumb hovered, then tapped delete. Are you sure you want to remove these contacts? Yes. Both names vanished. No more guilt. No more noise. Just peace. Later that day, I drove back to Port Haven Harbor, the same place where everything had fallen apart, and somehow, where it all came back together. The water glinted gold under the late afternoon sun. Cargo cranes moved slow and steady across the skyline, loading containers, building futures. My kind of rhythm. Inside the harbor cafe, Danny was already waiting at our usual corner booth, 2 mugs steaming in front of her. She grinned when she saw me. Well, if it isn't the millionaire doc rat herself. I laughed. Don't start. You deserve it, she said, sliding 1 mug toward me. After everything? You earned every penny of that payout. I sat, wrapping my hands around the coffee, feeling the heat sink into my palms. You know, it's weird. I thought getting it all back would feel like revenge. But it doesn't. Danny tilted her head. What's it feel like then? Freedom, I said simply. Like I can finally breathe again. She smiled. That's better than revenge anyway. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ships roll in. Seagulls swooped low over the water, catching scraps from a fishing boat. The world kept turning, steady, unbothered. After a bit, Danny broke the quiet. Heard from Tina lately? Yeah, I said. Final disbursement came through last week. Everything settled. She said Grandma's estate is officially closed. Nice. What about Gage and Rowan? I smiled. Gage starts captain's training next month. Rowan's opening a second branch of her company in Richmond. Looks like the family name's finally in good hands. Danny raised her mug. To good hands. We clinked. As the sun dipped lower, I walked outside to the docks. The wind whipped through my hair, salty and alive. I looked out over the water, the same bay Grandma built her shipping empire on, the same one she used to say held all her secrets. I could still hear her voice sometimes. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Back then, I never really got it. Now I did. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up when the tide's against you. For me, that was Danny. Tina. Rowan. Gage. The ones who fought beside me when everyone else tried to sink me. Money can buy yachts, condos, fancy lawyers, but it can't buy decency. It can't buy backbone. It sure as hell can't buy loyalty. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching a cargo ship push out toward open water. Danny walked up beside me, hands stuffed in her jacket pockets. Think they'll ever try to come back? I shook my head. Nah. Bankruptcy wiped them clean. They're renting a 1-bedroom in Portsmouth. Dad's trying to get dock work again. Mom's selling her old jewelry online. Danny let out a low whistle. Damn. Karma's got good aim. Karma didn't do it, I said, smiling faintly. We did. She grinned. Damn right we did. I looked out at the fading horizon, cranes silhouetted against orange light, ships moving like giants across the water. This was my world now. My future. I'd lost everything once, family, trust, peace. But I got something back that mattered more. Myself. I turned to Danny, tossing my empty cup into the trash. You ready? For what? She asked. For whatever's next. We started walking toward the parking lot, the air cooling, the day finally letting go. Behind us, the harbor lights flickered on, gold against the dark water, like tiny lighthouses reminding me where I came from. I didn't look back. Not once. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from anything. I was walking towards something. Freedom. And that was priceless. But just when I thought the storm had passed, an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. A voice on the other end said, "Miss Cross, there's something you should know about your grandmother's estate. It's not over." The phone rang just as I was pulling out of the harbor lot, the kind of ring that makes your gut tighten before you even answer. Unknown number. "Miss Cross," a man's voice said, low and formal. "This is Detective Cole Sanders with the Norfolk County Financial Crimes Division. You have a moment?" My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Sure. What's this about?" "It concerns your grandmother's estate," he said. "There's something you might want to see." "Are you still in Port Haven?" I hesitated. "Yeah." "Why?" He cleared his throat. "Because it looks like your parents weren't the only ones who had their hands in the pot." 15 minutes later, I was sitting in a small, windowless office at the county building. Detective Sanders looked like the kind of guy who'd seen everything: salt and pepper hair, tired eyes, cheap suit that somehow still looked ironed. He set a file on the desk between us. Across the cover, in bold black ink, Cross Estate, Supplemental Audit. "Your case opened up a few things," he said. "When the courts froze your parents' accounts, it triggered an automatic review of connected transfers. Turns out, there was another account your grandmother set up. Offshore. Never listed in the main trust." I frowned. "Another account? For who?" He flipped open the folder. Rows of numbers, bank names, wire transfers. Then a final page with a handwritten note. "Beneficiary, L. Cross." My breath caught. "That's me." Sanders nodded. "It's legit. She opened it 2 months before she passed, $500,000, sitting untouched in a private fund in the Cayman Islands." I blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope," he said, cracking the faintest smile. "Guess Grandma was smarter than everyone thought. Looks like she saw what your folks were up to and moved part of her assets off the books." I sat back, stunned. "So, all that time, she knew?" "Looks that way," he said. "She left a memo with the offshore registration. Said, and I quote, 'For Lena, when the tide turns.'" I couldn't help it, I laughed. A choked, disbelieving laugh that turned into tears before I could stop it. Sanders looked mildly uncomfortable, the way cops do when feelings enter the room. "We'll need to file paperwork to repatriate the funds, but it's yours by law." I wiped my face, still smiling. "You have no idea what that means." He nodded. "Actually, I kinda do." Outside, the sky had gone steel gray again, the kind of overcast that makes the whole world look washed clean. I called Danny the second I got in my truck. "You're not gonna believe this," I said. She gasped. "Let me guess, the detective call?" "Yeah." "Wait, how do you know?" She laughed. "Tina told me. She said she'd been chasing whispers about a second fund for months but didn't have access. I was literally about to call you." I shook my head, grinning. "Grandma played them all. She hid $500,000 offshore and left a note for me." Danny whistled. "Your grandma was a savage. She basically ran the long con on your parents." "No kidding," I said, starting the engine. "Guess I'm heading back to the lawyer's office." Round 2. Tina met us that afternoon, her heels clicking across the marble floor of her downtown office like a metronome. She looked up from her desk as we walked in. You got the call? Yeah, I said, dropping into the chair across from her. Tell me it's real. Tina smiled, that rare, satisfied kind of smile that made her look 10 years younger. It's real. Evelyn Cross was a strategist till her last breath. She filed the offshore documents under an alias connected to her original shipping line, hidden in a subsidiary she dissolved years ago. Clean. Legal. Genius. Danny let out a low whistle. So the old lady was running a secret play the whole time. Tina nodded. She must have suspected your parents would tamper with the trust. This was her insurance policy. I sat back, still trying to take it in. She really thought of everything. Tina leaned forward, her tone softening. She didn't just think ahead, Lena. She trusted you to find the truth. That hit me harder than I expected. For months, I'd been fighting ghosts, my parents' greed, the damage, the betrayal. But suddenly, Grandma felt present. Like she'd been guiding the storm from the start. That night, I drove out to her old dock at the far edge of Port Haven, the one she used to call the heart of the bay. The wooden planks creaked under my boots. The water shimmered in the moonlight, calm and endless. I stood there for a long time, watching the tide roll in, thinking about everything she'd built. Everything she'd protected. Everything I'd survived. When the wind shifted, I could almost hear her voice again. The tide always turns, kiddo. You just gotta know when to anchor down. I smiled through the tears. You were right, Grandma. You always were. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Tina. Funds secured. Transfer complete. Welcome to Freedom, Part 2. TH. I laughed, shaking my head. For once, it didn't feel like victory or payback. It felt like peace, the kind you earn, not the kind that's handed to you. I looked out over the dark water, the city lights reflecting like scattered stars. Everything came full circle. And somewhere, I swear I could almost see her, standing at the end of the dock, wind in her silver hair, smiling that knowing smile that said, I told you so. Just as I turned to leave, a faint light flickered in Grandma's old boathouse, one that hadn't worked in years. Inside, something waited. Another secret she'd left behind. The boathouse sat at the edge of the pier like a ghost, gray paint peeling, roof sagging, doors chained shut since before Grandma passed. But now, that old floodlight above the entrance was flickering weakly, cutting through the fog like a heartbeat. I killed the truck's engine and stepped out, gravel crunching beneath my boots. The night was quiet except for the sound of the waves slapping against the pilings. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. The padlock on the door hung open, rust flakes catching the light. Okay, Grandma, I murmured. What else did you hide from me? I pushed the door open, and the smell of oil, salt, and cedar hit me like a memory. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the glow of my phone flashlight. Inside, everything was just how she'd left it, her old workbench cluttered with tools, a half-finished model ship, and a faded photo of us taped to the wall. Me, 10 years old, missing a tooth and grinning like I owned the world. I smiled despite myself. Hey, old lady. Something glinted near the back, a small, metal lockbox tucked beneath a tarp. My chest tightened. I dragged it out, brushed off the dust, and flipped it open. Inside were 3 things. A leather-bound notebook, edges worn soft. A brass compass with her initials carved into the lid. And an envelope, sealed with red wax. The compass felt heavy in my hand, still ticking faintly when I opened it. North, steady as ever. I tore the envelope open, careful not to rip the letter inside. Her handwriting flowed across the page, looping, deliberate, perfectly her. Lena. If you're reading this, it means you finally found your sea legs. I always knew you would. I couldn't protect you from everything, sweetheart. Not from greed. Not from betrayal. But I could leave you the tools to steer through it. The money was never the real inheritance. You are. Don't let this world make you hard. Let it make you clear. Find people who build with you, not take from you. And when you're lost, use the compass. It'll point north, but that's not the direction you're looking for. Look for your north. The one that keeps you moving, no matter how rough the tide gets. Love always. Grandma Evelyn. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, before the words started to blur. My throat burned, and I laughed softly through the tears. You sneaky genius. Behind me, footsteps crunched on the dock. I turned to see Danny, holding 2 coffees, breath fogging in the cold. Thought I'd find you here, she said. You weren't answering your phone. I smiled. You're not gonna believe what she left. She stepped inside, peering over my shoulder at the notebook and the compass. Classic Evelyn Cross, she said softly. Still teaching lessons from beyond the grave. Yeah, I said, running my fingers over the compass lid. She always said the sea tells you the truth if you listen long enough. Danny looked around the boathouse, the dusty nets, the rusted anchor chains, the quiet weight of memory. So, what now? I slipped the compass into my pocket and grabbed the notebook. Now? I rebuild. Maybe not her empire, but something that matters. Danny grinned. Like what? A shipping company? A podcast? A revenge tour? I laughed. Maybe all 3. But smaller. Cleaner. My way. We stepped outside, the wind cutting sharper now, the moon glowing like a spotlight on the bay. The flickering bulb above the door finally gave out with a soft pop, leaving the dock lit only by moonlight. I looked out over the water one last time, that letter still open in my hand. You're north, I whispered. Got it. The next few weeks moved fast. I used part of the offshore fund to buy a small warehouse down by the port, one of the ones Grandma used to lease back in the day. Danny helped me set up a logistics startup, Crossline Freight and Data Solutions, a blend of her tech smarts and my shipping routes. We hired local dockhands, rebuilt some old routes, gave jobs back to people who'd lost theirs when my parents' mess hit the headlines. Word spread quick. We weren't just moving cargo, we were rebuilding trust. One evening, about 2 months later, I stood on the balcony above our new office, watching the sunset burn gold over the cranes. The air buzzed with the sound of work, forklifts, laughter, the hum of engines. Life. Danny came up beside me, sipping a Coke. You ever think about calling them? She asked carefully. I shook my head. No. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. She nodded slowly. Guess that's your north, huh? I smiled. Yeah. My own direction. Finally. Down below, a ship horn echoed across the bay, deep and steady. The same sound I used to fall asleep to as a kid. It didn't sound lonely anymore. It sounded like forward motion. I pulled Grandma's compass from my pocket. The needle quivered, then steadied north, right toward the open water. Ready? I asked. Danny grinned. Born ready. We headed back inside, lights flicking on one by one behind us. The city stretched out ahead, wide, alive, full of new beginnings. And somewhere deep inside, I swear I could still hear Grandma's laugh, carried on the wind. But somewhere, in a dusty bank vault overseas, a dormant account blinked to life, one with Grandma Evelyn's name on it. And this time, it wasn't meant for me. 1 year later. Port Haven had changed, or maybe I had. The cranes looked less like steel monsters now and more like what they really were, lifelines. The port buzzed again, steady and alive, the way Grandma always wanted. Crossline Freight and Data Solutions had gone from a one-room startup to a full-fledged operation. Our name was on trucks, invoices, contracts. We weren't rich, not in the old Cross family way, but every dollar was clean. Every partnership honest. And that was worth more than any trust fund. Danny was running the data team now, always with a coffee in one hand and 3 screens open at once. Gage had just gotten his captain's license. Rowan's company was shipping out of our docks twice a month. We'd turned the wreckage into something real. Grandma would have been proud. It was a warm evening when I got the call. Not the kind of call that panics you, the kind that stirs something familiar and uneasy. Miss Cross, a woman's voice said over a faint hum of static, "This is Elise from Trident International Holdings. I believe you're the executor of the Crossline estate." I frowned. Co-owner, yeah. Why? "There's a matter you should be aware of," she said, papers rustling faintly on her end. "An account in Zurich under the name E. Cross Maritime has just reactivated after over a year of dormancy." My pulse picked up. I thought all of Grandma's assets were settled. "So did we," the woman replied. "But this one's unusual." The account holder set a time trigger. It activates 1 year after confirmation of Evelyn Cross's estate closure. The beneficiary on file isn't you. Then who? The line crackled. A Rowan Cross. Listed as secondary heir. I blinked, stunned. My sister? Yes, ma'am. And the note attached reads, "For the one who left before the storm." After the call ended, I sat in my office staring out at the harbor, the sunset bleeding orange across the water. It figured, Grandma had one last twist left in her. Rowan and I hadn't talked much since the trial. She'd kept her distance, rebuilding her own life in Richmond. We weren't enemies, just strangers carrying the same last name. Now, apparently, we shared something else. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found hers. My thumb hovered over the call button. For a long minute, I just stared at it. Then I pressed it. It rang twice before she picked up. "Lena?" Her voice was cautious, surprised. "Hey, Ro." I swallowed. "We need to talk." "About Grandma." A pause. Then a small laugh, the kind that sounded more like relief than humor. "I was wondering when you'd call." 2 days later, I met her at a cafe halfway between Richmond and Port Haven, same chain Grandma used to love, right down to the oversweet muffins. Rowan looked older than I remembered, but steadier too. She wore the same leather jacket she'd had in college, scuffed at the elbows. "So," she said, stirring her coffee, "you heard about Zurich?" "Yeah. Detective Sanders called me after the bank did. $500,000 in her name. Triggered automatically." Rowan smiled faintly. "Of course she did. That woman never stopped planning." I laughed softly. "No, she didn't." Rowan looked at me for a long moment. "You know, she called me 2 weeks before she passed. Said she wished we'd stop fighting each other." I nodded, the lump in my throat tightening. Guess this is her way of forcing us to fix that. She reached across the table, and for the first time in years, I took her hand. No drama. No speeches. Just a quiet, steady peace. Maybe this time, she said, we build it together. I smiled. Yeah. Maybe we finally do. That night, I drove home along the coast, windows down, air salty and warm. The compass Grandma left me sat on the dashboard, needle steady and sure. But this time, it wasn't just pointing north. It was pointing home.